What's going on, people? Welcome to Live Palace News. It is Thursday, the 5th of September, and here we are talking about the latest updates of the day. As always, make sure to get involved throughout the show, even if you're not watching it live, by putting down your comments in the comment section down below. And of course, if you're watching live, in the live comment section. If you do enjoy the content, hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you to every single one of you that's been doing that throughout these videos. Really appreciate you all. It has been helping the algorithm. It has been helping growing the channel. But we have to keep pushing for it. That's why I always ask for the like button if you do enjoy the content. I'm joined by AJ here to discuss the latest news. As you can see, how much could Marc Guehi be sold for next summer? There's an article related to that. And also, Eze. We spoke about him yesterday, but who could have been his potential replacement this summer? Could we go for him next summer if Eze does actually get sold, as well as answering your questions and more? AJ, how you doing, bro? We spoke about the gym. We spoke about
Yeah,
summer's
yeah.
over in the UK anyways.
Well, mate. Hopefully, it's not over completely. I think it's just a case of just getting back into the swing of things, getting back into the gym. The day I decide to go back, the weather decides to betray me. Maybe it's God giving me a sign. I don't know, but nah, man. Everything's good, man. The Palace news is flowing. There's a lot going on, even though there isn't anything going on in terms of matches. But there seems to be a lot of news and odd little things sort of popping off here and there. Obviously, I've been watching you, T, Patrick, going through the Palace news and stuff like that. I've been watching in the background and keeping an eye on stuff, man. It's interesting. Like it's got my brain thinking in many different ways.
Yeah. I mean, there is quite a bit going on in the background. It is still a relatively quiet period, but yeah, here and there, surprisingly. I mean, this week, the fact that we've come on 3 times out of the 4 days is surprising. I didn't expect there to be anything literally, but let's get actually started with the first bit of news. As you can see from the title, Marc Guehi will be speaking about him, and this report is coming from Sammy Mokbel from the Daily Mail, who said the following: should Marc Guehi not sign a contract extension, Crystal Palace would look to sell him next summer. Before I read out the region that we'll be looking for, AJ, let me ask you one question. Have you seen the report yet?
I have.
Okay.
I did also see the interview from Steve Parish as well. So I've kind of
Okay. I was going to ask you a question. In fact, let me ask the chat question, even if you're watching on replay. How much do you reckon Guehi, with 1 year left on his deal, is worth? I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about that. Then I'm going to finish off the report because I just want to see a few numbers. If you haven't especially seen the report as well, it'll be interesting to get a few figures with a year left in his contract. However, you've had a bit of time now. According to this report, Palace want a deal in the region of £50 million. AJ, with 1 year left on his contract, do you still think it's possible for us to get £50 million for Marc Guehi next summer?
Yes, but in the real life terms, not really. I think there's ways you can justify it. So he's an England international. He's a starting England international. He's got a large ceiling. He's come on leaps and bounds. Everywhere he's gone, he's achieved things. Where I'm obviously being a youth player at Chelsea and winning accolades. Obviously, the England under-17s, he was part of that. He's done well in the Championship, and obviously he's come to us and he's done really, really well for himself. The England tax, the English player tax, that is a thing. It does exist. And let's be honest, I think with the Premier League, I think it is a seller's market. So the way you got to look at it is, out of the big clubs that will potentially be interested in him, who's willing to pay that £50 million to make sure that they secure the signature? Because if you're looking at, let's say, I know Liverpool's been mentioned, Man United on occasion's been mentioned, Chelsea might potentially be interested as well. Newcastle, you can't get away from that either. Out of those clubs, for them to secure a player like Marc Guehi, I reckon they would be willing to pay that to guarantee to get his signature. Because yes, granted, he's got 1 year in his contract, but we're not talking about 1 year on an average player here. We're talking about so. At the end of the day, any of those clubs that buy him, he improves the defense instantly. So what I don't see why he would not be. I would have probably said 40 to 50 million pounds for him anyway. If somebody said to me if we can buy him now, but let's see what happens. You don't know. The season can turn on its head. We can start sort of pushing up the table. You could easily justify him signing a new deal as well. He doesn't seem like he's that fussed about leaving. He's the club captain. There's an argument to suggest that he might potentially stay. We are building something. I think the end of the window went really, really well for us. And I think if we can upturn our form, getting him to stay, I've not completely ruled that out yet. I just think we would probably just will not be able to pin him down to like a 5-year deal, for example, even if it was like a 2 or 3 year extension on top of what he's got. I think that can potentially be a thing. And I think that's just me glass half full situation. But if we do have to consider selling him, £50 million is not unreasonable for a player like Marc Guehi. I'm sorry, it just isn't.
Yeah, but then don't you think the contract length, who would pay £50 million if he has a year left on his contract? Do you think that's still possible? Are you not worried about, that element?
Nah, I think from the Steve Parish interview, there was a bit of anticipation that he was going to be the first one to go. And I think the Anderson situation put a spanner in that works. It did seem that the club had planned for Mark to go. That was what I was dissecting out of that interview. But we have to be realistic here. Inflation in footballers gets higher and higher and higher. If you wanted to buy a decent player from a top 6 club, even with 1 year left in their contract, you're probably going to be quoted at 40 to 50 million pounds anyway. They're quoting those kind of numbers for players like Joe Gomez. Granted, he's not got 1 year left on his deal, but if you weigh him up against a player like Marc Guehi, we have to be a bit more realistic here. And just because we're Little Crystal Palace, well, are we even Little Crystal Palace anymore? Just because we're Crystal Palace doesn't mean that we can't demand top dollar for our players. Marc Guehi improves pretty much every team in the Premier League. He makes every defense in the Premier League better. He's England's starting centre-back. How many players in Europe right now, centre-back wise, in terms of that age group and in terms of the potential that you're getting out of them, you're going to be able to buy, and more importantly for us, as far as I'm concerned, you're going to be able to get for a bargain. I don't think there's any, if many. They'll pay it.
Yeah. I just think his contract length is a potential hurdle. If we were to ask for £50 million, it will be interesting to see how many clubs are after him next summer. Because this summer, let's be honest, it was pretty much just Newcastle, which was surprising because maybe we expected a few other big clubs to get involved and potentially a bidding war, which didn't happen. But next summer, I don't know. I think more in the region of £40 million. I can see clubs paying for Marc Guehi. I'll be very surprised, and if he was to leave for £50 million. But you did also mention that you are confident. Well, not confident, but you're optimistic in Guehi signing a new deal. If that is the case, then why hasn't he signed a new deal so far?
Well, he stated that wasn't his intention a couple of months ago. Things change, circumstances change. It looked like him and Anderson had a great relationship, so I'm not going to sort of ride on that too much. But at the end of the day, he's the club captain. The club is going places. If we can achieve our goals and we start progressing towards achieving our goals, there is a chance he does stay. We don't know what. The thing is with Marc Guehi is, in terms of his humbleness and the way he kind of comes across in interviews and even just, any conversation I've seen him have, he's not the kind of player that gives off I want to move to a bigger club. But at the same time, he doesn't always give off the impression that he's going to stay, if that makes sense. He's not really making his intentions clear. I don't know if he wants to progress onto a European club. I mean, most players with ambition probably would, but he made no noise in the summer to want to move to Newcastle. Granted, Newcastle aren't currently in Europe, but they've obviously got a better chance than we do. He's managed to breaking into the England team, doing that at Crystal Palace. So maybe he's had a bit of a head turner going into the Euros. Maybe after the Euros, he's come back into the fold. He might see that the club is bringing in some quality players, because I'm going to be honest, I think we had a really decent end to the window. I guess the way I've always mentioned before on this channel, historically with any player, is you have to, as a club, show the players your levels of ambition and give them a reason not to want to leave. So at one way you look at it, he leaves at the end of the season and he goes straight into a European top side. If a European top side pays the money for him, then you have to let him go. But then if it's the kind of likes of a Villa or something in that bracket, there is a debate to suggest that that might not be where he thinks his ceiling is. He comes across as a very humble player and a really nice guy and very down to earth. So he's not stupid. He's going to be obviously having common sense. He's going to have his people around him that are having conversations. Even when Nketiah signed, I know it's been noted that people were talking about it, them lot trying to get him to stay as well. So maybe just a bit of familiarity around the team and a familiarity and a bit of a home for him here can be enough to persuade him to stay. Maybe that's just me being a bit naive, but I wouldn't always rule that out. We've always been able to convince, going back to Zaha days and, even with the Elise situation, we managed to convince a lot of these guys to stay, even if it's been for an additional season or two. I just don't think that's beyond the realms of impossible.
Yeah. I think those are fair points. But for him to stay, I feel like we need to start the season strong. Well, the season started, but after the international break, just keep pushing on and targeting high up the table. DLM Designs, big up to you, bro, who's been helping us out with the thumbnails. We're going to be doing more work with him as well, people. So make sure to check him out. He's saying, feel sorry for Palace fans. You guys should be targeting Europe by now. I think that should be the aim. If you want to keep players like Guehi, I mean, you have to show that ambition on the pitch and by the league table. I think that's what it falls down to for me. I think if it's a mediocre season and we don't push on, then no, I don't see Guehi signing a new deal. But you could be tempted. He could be tempted. I'm not writing it off. You could be tempted.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should be
targeting. He was pushing for a move to Newcastle, even though the media narrative was like that. He was open. Being open to a move doesn't mean that he's desperate to leave. So yeah, it would require a bit of convincing.
Yeah, I agree exactly with what he's saying. I mean, but we should be targeting Europe. I think we've been in the Premier League long enough, and the way that the ownership structure of the club has worked is, and even what the chairman says is, why is Europe why are we not challenging at least for when there are more European places on the table for us? Why are we not chasing that? 11, 12 years in a Premier League and not one European campaign. I've seen teams in the Premier League been there for 1 season, 2 seasons, and somehow pull off a miracle. So I don't know. I think the problem is we are too happy with treading water. And I think we've had teams that have been capable of pushing up the table. And I don't want to point it at a Roy Hodgson, for example, but I do feel like in those brackets and the kind of teams we had back then, we've wasted opportunities. I think we were very, very close with Vieira, but then unfortunately due to the second season and not really getting enough players at all, it's almost like we're scared to gamble. And I think,
but then don't you think that worked so far, being the sustainable approach in terms of staying in the Premier League this long?
Where it works.
Look at some of those teams that's played in Europe. For example, Burnley's played in Europe before Palace, but Burnley's also been relegated quite a few times. They took that risk, but
that's the gamble. The thing is, if you're going to gamble that kind of situation, or you're going to gamble maybe to invest in a team, or maybe going all out in one sort of competition, it's a case of being able to sustain that. So the nearest I've physically seen it with my own 2 eyes with Palace is the Vieira first season, where we started picking up points, we started looking good. Those new players were all locking and getting together with each other. We got to the semi-final of the FA Cup, and I just felt like the following summer, we didn't continue that momentum. And I think that does come back to bite you eventually. It's a long season, it's a long campaign, it's 9 months of non-stop football. If you look at the likes of, I don't know, a Villa or a Newcastle, yes, granted, they have got vast sums of money more than us, but they have at least invested in their team. They've taken risks. I'm going to be horrible and use the Brighton example. Their chairman has taken risks, but obviously he's a calculated man anyway for various different other reasons. But Brighton have taken risks. They've gone out and spent the money and kind of taken things on a little bit more differently. They've almost been proactive rather than reactive. And I feel like too many times historically in the past, whether it be Parish or whoever it may be in the boardroom, whatever's going on, I feel like we're more reactive than proactive with things. We don't make changes in our, in that setup until it's too late, or we don't make the right move in the window because we're not willing to take the risk on a player. I mean, look at the players we were linked with in the summer in terms of attacking options. You got Jonathan Rowe, ended up in Marseille. You got Nusa, ended up in Salzburg, I believe. So it's because we aren't potentially taking the risks. And at the same time, I am very grateful that we are able to watch Premier League football every season. But I almost feel like sometimes the club is banking on there always being 3, 4, maybe even 5 worse teams than us. So no matter what happens, we're nice. And we maybe just got this player through. Maybe we're at the beginning of this new structure of things where we are picking up Elise's and Eze's and Guehis and stuff at cheap prices and selling them for profit. But then you have to, anybody that had their own business or works at a high level in a business knows that to an extent, you got to kind of spend money to make money. Or sometimes if you have to reinvest your equity back into your business to then be able to progress and move on to bigger and stronger things. And I just don't feel like the club has ever really taken that step. I think the only time we had an outrageous window was probably the first summer under Vieira, and that was because A, we were desperate, B, he wasn't our first choice, and we lost, 10, 11 first team players, so we had no choice but to spend that money anyway. Why is it when we almost look like we're on a cusp of getting something, the club isn't always proactive enough to take a risk on a player or maybe spend a little bit more money? It depends what you want. I'm grateful that we have Premier League football, and I'm grateful that we always start every season. But for, I guess, maybe this is more of a younger fan sort of conversation to have. There's always going to be that situation where you're kind of looking at the background and thinking, well, why can we not push on? And it just feels like
you're the younger fan now, yeah?
I'm just saying, when you look at a younger fan, it depends who you're asking. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
I thought you were talking about yourself. I thought you were talking about when you look at us younger fans, we want more. I thought you were talking about yourself.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
So young. No,
I'm young-ish. It depends who you're asking, innit?
There's a good comment from Warren saying we also have to factor in we didn't have Eze and Elise playing together and no Decore, etc. Do you think also injuries have gone against us as well? But then again, that's relates to the squad depth. We haven't had the squad depth in the past. That's
fair, but then I think there have been opportunities. I mean, it's a fair comment, but I'm going to just use the example of when Glasner walked through the door, how many of those players did he have at his disposal straight away? Granted, he took him, 3 or 4 games to get going? But then when we started going on our run, we were missing Elise, we were missing Guehi. Like, there were a lot of players that weren't there. Decore wasn't here the whole season. So there's an argument there. It's fair. It's a fair comment. We were picking up results without those players, bro.
No. But it's an okay argument. But if you have the depth, which I believe now our squad depth has improved this summer, then you should be able to combat that. The difference was the drop in quality was unreal. It was unreal. We just didn't have the depth. We had players on the bench, but the players were not good enough, and that's been a problem for a long time.
Yeah, but then you say they're not good enough, right? But then who defined them as not good enough? Because, like I just said, Glasner was still getting results without those players.
All of these players coming off the bench are not good enough. They haven't been good enough.
But remember, Glasner was still getting results without those players, D. So do we go back to Hodgson now and just look at it and say maybe you weren't utilizing the squad or maybe using the right tactics or formations correctly?
No, but we didn't have the squad depth. We didn't.
Bro,
we didn't have the quality on the bench.
Most of those players were missing under Glasner as well,
No, but we're not talking about Glasner. We're talking about we didn't have Eze and Elise, Decore, no injuries. Like, yeah,
no, but towards the end of the season, Elise only just came back into the team, because remember, Elise had a long injury. Guehi was out.
Yeah, but then of course the manager plays a part.
Eze was there.
No, Roy Hodgson coming to the football club. Yes, of course. That was never aiming for European football. I don't know what's going on with your connection. That's why you keep cutting in and out. But not in terms of connection. It's just StreamYard. But yeah, I do think that also plays a part. I mean, Roy Hodgson, of course. Like that, when we'll get in European football with him, it's never going to happen. But yeah, if we did have the squad depth, this wouldn't even be a topic. That's my point about what Warren has said. Animal saying, I don't think we're making Europe, but I do think our team is still clicking. No one can make a judgment from what we've seen so far. And by the way, if you do have any questions, put a Q&A as Colin has done in the chat. I'm going to quickly show it in the screen. We'll answer it towards the end. You can see the Q and A dot at the start of the question. We will answer that towards the end of the stream. And if you're just joining us now, please, if you do enjoy the video, hit the like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel to normally sound future content. It helps us out massively. Michael saying we really need to get our season fireworks to start now. A few goals to nil over Leicester and QPR will do us wonders. We can kick off towards Europe, but it has to start now. Yeah, it does. I mean, I think I'm very excited about the Leicester game. I'm very excited about the month of September onwards. I think, as you said, Michael, we do need to kick on now. And I think with this international break and a bit of rest and time to work with the new players, we must kick on. Henry saying, I think other big teams in the Championship are lower, such as Leeds, Sunderland, Sheffield Wednesday, would give their right arm to be where Palace are. I understand that point, but with all due respect, I don't really care about where those clubs are. I mean, there'll be a lot of clubs below us, of course, that will give their right arm to be where we are. But that still doesn't excuse the fact that we've been in the Premier League for 10 years and we should be looking up rather than down. And I think AJ has made some valid points about some of the ambition that we've used in the transfer market beforehand anyway, before the Elise, Eze's, etc. joining the football club.
But then it's quite an interesting point Henry puts there, because the thing is, it goes back down to that gambling thing I was talking about. Because Leeds have been there and done that. But unfortunately, in a situation where they did gamble, they went into bankruptcy and obviously their finances were all kind of messed up. Obviously, that's going back.
Yeah, here we see.
Bro, like, he was probably a toddler back then, to be fair. So obviously, that's going way back.
Oh, you talk about, I'm talking about the financial problems now.
Like,
they also have
financial problems and stuff. That's how far back their gambles have gone. And they've gambled over the years as well. Sunderland have been run a little bit more conservatively over the recent years. Sheffield Wednesday, I'm going to be honest with you, they're not even on my radar. Respectfully, like, I don't know how that club's run. I don't really know what they're on. But I know that Leeds and Sunderland are good examples of where you've been in certain positions and you've gambled on certain players and stuff and it hasn't actually worked out. So that is a fair point. But that's me going back to, sometimes you do have to gamble and it does pay off, or sometimes it doesn't. That all falls down to scouting and getting the investment right, and sometimes luck. You know, sometimes you do invest in a player, they get injured or they don't work out. It's a fair argument, but I just think that when Leeds have made those kind of pushes historically in the past, it was because they gambled and it paid off for them. And I'm pretty sure if you ask a Leeds fan, they'll tell you that. Well, a Leeds fan that's old enough, they'll tell you that.
Let's be real. Yeah, let's be real. I mean, as I've said, before the Eze's and Elises, etc., joining the football club, it was pretty much the managerial appointments pretty much were, you know, to stay up in the league. And that was it. Even the transfers, we weren't really that ambitious in the market. Like, I never thought, oh, wow, like this season we're trying to push on. It was just about staying in the league. I mean, Frank de Boer joined the football club. That was going to be something different. That lasted about 4 games. Any other ambitious managers that we had during that time?
But we had Sam Allardyce, but then
that's what I'm saying. We went through them all. So only recently we've kind of changed our approach and trying to do something now by buying these players, high potential players, and trying to sell them on. So yeah, we have tried to stay in the Premier League. That's what I care about. I know what you mean about the other clubs and how much they would love to be in the Premier League, but we've been here too long. Well, not too long, but 11 years. 11 years is enough time to now start looking up rather than always flirting with relegation, which I'm not saying is the case, but it took us a while to get to the stage as well. Warren saying I'm saying more about them playing together. We either had one fit, one injured, etc. Yeah, I do get that. Dave talking about the Guehi, £50 million potential price tag. He's saying very few £50 million plus deals are done this summer, let alone for someone with 12 months left on their contract. And Colin's saying, to be fair, since Elise has left, that's the first time I've seen Eze proper smiling and having jokes. So having Nketiah here and playing with him will bring that bounce back in his game.
I hope so.
I agree with that. I think Nketiah, I mean, even as a player, I was excited. And also to have someone next to Eze, and, you know, you could tell he had a great connection with Elise. And it gives you a player that he can relate to. He's known him from the England youth days. They've got a good connection. And he even did say 18 months in the making. They clearly talk to each other. So it's good to have that connection with Nketiah at the football club. Where I'm saying the disagreement upstairs between Texas Parish probably didn't help Palace gambling. Yeah, I think that's a fair point as well. And that's a
I
point
agree.
which now that the transfer window's over, I know Texas still after Everton. Ideally, we want that solved before the January window. Not saying that it has impacted our business, but it's just been a problem there that's been spoken about for a bit too long now between Texas and Parish. You'd want that solved sooner rather than later. I think the focus should now be, trying to get that deal sorted, AJ.
I agree. I think just any well-oiled machine, you want all the parts and everything all going in the same direction, to be fair, or all going, you want everybody's in the right frame of mind. I don't know what Texas is doing. I mean, we could probably do a whole 2-hour show on that, to be fair. I know we've even had our conversations in our WhatsApp group and stuff about what potentially is going on with the Texas situation as well. He just needs to either go or commit to the club. You got to pick one. And that's it.
I think he's going, though. He has to be going. He's been playing for too many clubs.
The thing is, to buy a football club isn't something you do over the weekend. You know what I mean? It takes a minute. And as long as, if it is a case of he's happy, he's walking, he's leaving, fine. And at least all the other board members know, so we can start putting budgets in place and start making things happen. Then fine, whatever. Wish you well. See you later, mate.
Yeah. Hopefully that is solved before the start of next year. If it's sorted by then, I'd be happy because it's just been lingering on. Even in the last weeks of the transfer window, we're still talking about John Textor as well as transfer news. It's just crazy. Like he's going after Everton, and there's that news, and there's player news, players coming, players leaving. It was so busy, so crazy. And now that transfers have calmed down, hopefully we get a bit more insight into the latest with that. A few updates won't do no harm. By the way, people, if you have just joined now, if you haven't already, please hit the like button if you are enjoying the show, as well as subscribing if you're new to the channel. And we'll go through some questions. I know a few of you have already sent in questions. You can send in general Palace questions. Doesn't have to be about Guehi. There's one question about ownership, which is very interesting that we have spoke about before. So we'll go into that as well. But quickly, let's talk about Eze. According to the Daily Mail, there's another update on Eze, which is that Crystal Palace were convinced that Eze would leave this summer window, which of course he didn't do. They had lined up a deal for Bakayoko in case Eze was sold from, I believe he's in Holland, but it's
PSV.
PSV, that's it. Yeah, interesting because he's a left footer.
He's more of a winger,
he's a left footer, that would have made more sense for the right hand side. Even though if we did sell him, then he could have came in on a right and Kamada could have gone to the left. But interesting player to be linked with.
I would have, to be fair, that would go into the bracket of a Elise replacement. I think. He's very talented. I believe he was linked with the likes of Arsenal and I think even Man United.
He's been linked with a few clubs.
He would definitely. He's a very pleasing on the eye player, and what I mean by that is he's got a lot of skill and a lot of speed. He is very, very rapid. I've watched him a couple times. I don't watch him week in, week out. I'm not even going to try and beg it, but I've seen him a couple times. He's a very interesting player. I would have loved to have him at Palace all day. I think I saw that one link with him at some point in the summer, but you know what the summer transfer window's like, every day it's hearsay. So I would have loved him in the team with Eze rather than to replace him. I don't think he would be a like-for-like replacement. No way. We'd have to change the system. Because every time I've ever seen him, he's more of a winger cutting in and doing a couple tricks and spraying the ball in a box or trying to have a shot off.
Would that not work? That sounds ideal. That sounds very ideal if you can cut in, especially down the right or down the left. But
then that's where I would put him more into the Elise replacement than an Eze replacement. I think the problem is it's about complementing the players that you've got in the team existing rather than selling off. Let's see what happens, man. Because the problem is, I think they're quoting us at £68 million. Yes, Eze will be a year older. He's still got 3 years left on his deal.
I think 2 years next summer.
Oh, will it be 2 years? So let's see what happens. I think, it was very strange watching that Parrish interview. It was almost like he was trying to sell him off. It was very peculiar. But Eze is one of our key players, and he's one of our key players for a reason. I think the way that man plays week in, week out for us it's a blessing to have him. But every player has their price. We are still Crystal Palace, and if the money's right, we have to take it. We can't. While we're in the position we're in right now today, if the numbers make sense, then as long as we're getting paid a fair amount, then we'll just have to wish him on his way. Two top players come and go. There would always be somebody that we will look to in the team to progress us onto a potentially another level, or we will look at in that same sort of frontman hero status anyway.
Yeah, we spoke about Eze yesterday. And yeah, let's just see what happens. His release clause, of course, does activate next summer. And if you haven't already done so, you can check yesterday's stream where we speak about Eze in depth, about his price. Today is Guehi. The reports don't stop, even though the window is closed. As you can see, if you're enjoying the stream, please hit the like button. Thank you to every single one of you for your support. Let's go to the question before we do wrap up. Let's answer Colin's question. Do you think with this squad we can get into Europe this season? Seriously? It's hard to say because we haven't really seen the new players. But I'll be honest, on paper, I genuinely think it's going to be the best defense we've had since getting promoted. On paper, anyways. Let's see how they perform. So defensively, we're fine. Midfield, we got depth as well. We've improved on depth. We didn't really sign any midfielders, but we still naturally just improved on depth with 2 playing in midfield. And going forward, we'll see how Nketiah beds in. But for you, AJ, I know we'll see how the squad plays. But right now, do you think that we've got enough to push into Europe?
Yes. It's difficult, but not impossible. I think you're right. I think we've had one of the best Palace squads I've ever seen, on paper for possibly ever.
Yeah,
but
squad.
It will depend.
I agree. Not on 11, but squads. I think
like our actual squad. Our squad depth is pretty clean. And remember, you've still got a few players coming back from injury that will potentially come back into that as well. And obviously, as the time, it all depends on the momentum and how everyone starts sort of linking together as the season goes on, to be fair. And I think we're depending where we're at in the middle of the season, maybe 1 or 2 additionals in January. Maybe I'm thinking a little bit too far ahead, but I think we're definitely in the right place. And I think we've backed the manager. It took us a while. I would like those players to come in earlier, but obviously that's out of our hands. That's neither here or there now. But yeah. I think that the main important thing about a lot of those players that we brought in is they've got the experience. Those players have all played in Europeans' top competitions. I believe, did Chalobah win the Champions League with Chelsea? I know he was in the squad at the time, or he was a youth player at the time, but I'm pretty sure he's won the Champions League with Chelsea. But either way, we've got players in that team that have experienced the very highest level. Those players can only make the rest of the team better. And we've definitely got a bit of quality in there existing anyway. So I'm all for it, man. I think we could press. I mean, remember, when we're saying Europe, we're not talking about Champions League, I'll take that European Conference League all day. I would happily finish, 7th or 8th, and then get that European Conference League. I would be the most gas man on the planet. So Europa League might be a little bit of a stretch or too early, but not impossible. I think Champions League, forget that. That's not happening in anytime soon. But I think a Conference League place, or maybe even a European place through a cup win, not impossible.
I'll be honest. Look, we talk about some of these players wanting to play at the top level. And we've got a lot of players. I know we talk about, it's hard to get into Europe because, there's Newcastle, there's this team that's also trying. But hold up. Guehi is wanted by clubs who want to be, in Europe or in Europe. Eze's, another player that's highly regarded. Chalobah, of course, has had experience playing for Chelsea. Wharton is another talented player. Mateta, who was wanted by Villa. If we have all of these players who is wanted by other top European clubs or by European clubs, then why on earth should we not be aiming to get into Europe whilst keeping these players at Palace? I don't care about other clubs and their squads, etc. I care about the players that we kept. There's a reason why these players have been linked for big moves this summer or in the past. There's a reason. I know Elise is gone, but you know, we've had these quality players who clearly are European standards. So I think Europe should be the aim. It should be the aim. We the window, we started off nicely, then we had a mediocre kind of middle period, then we ended it off strongly. Yeah, I think that should be the aim. But aim, of course, that's a big aim. For me, the minimum still has to be top 10. That is the minimum. We have to try to be another.
But then you've literally hit the nail on the head. Every single player we brought in the summer has played in Europe. All of them. Even Sarr with Marseille. Like, they have all played in Europe. Sarr, Lacroix, Nketiah, Kamada. Some of those players have won European competitions with our manager. We've got a European winning manager. Like,
exactly. So why shouldn't that be the aim? That's my point. Like, forget about other teams. If we got this manager that's won a European competition, if you got these players that are wanted by European clubs that have massive price tags, like, that should be the aim. I'm not looking down on the squad. That should be the aim. Europe should be the aim. But whether we get there, let's see how the new players bed into Palace. But I think there is potential. I do think there is potential. But minimum top 10. We have to try and finish top 10 again. I'll be disappointed if we don't. Colin, with another question saying, do you think would have better seasons previous if Glasner was signed when Vieira was here, etc. with them players? Yeah, 100%. The reason for that is because, with all due respect, Glasner is a better manager than Vieira. And his CV speaks for himself. So, yeah. Sib saying, would you take Saudi owners when Textor sells up?
Oh.
How do you feel about this? I think Palace wouldn't go down this approach.
I morally would be very against it. I can't. The thing is, I've criticized Newcastle for it, but at the same time, I can't criticize Newcastle fans because it's not. If you support a football club all your life and then they're now being run by said ownership, you can't control that. But morally, because of the kind of person I am and, my beliefs in life and stuff like that, I wouldn't be a fan of it. I would never take that money.
They invested into the community,
I wouldn't do it.
Area and brought Palace forward further than we are right now in terms of our ambition. Because you were talking about ambition.
I would never give, call me an idiot, but I would never, ever give up my morals for blood money. I just couldn't. No way.
Okay, fair enough. Sib saying, how many points are you expecting over the next 5 games? I mean, the next 5 games is very juicy.
What's that? Leicester, 3 points.
United, Everton, Liverpool, and Forest. So some difficult games.
7. I want to go with 7.
3. I'll be honest, that United game, I'm looking at that game. Especially at home, I'm looking at that game because they are not.
I'm thinking a draw, No. But then even if that's 7, 8, 9, yeah. Because Man United are, boy.
Look, you think Leicester win, United draw, Everton away from home. Oh, I know realistically we struggle at Everton, but we should be beating Everton. We should be. I mean, we got 3, 4, 7. Liverpool game right off. I don't know. Forest away from home as well on a Monday night. I think minimum 7, but that could go up to
7 to 9. I'd say
8 to 10. You could go up to 8 to 10.
I'm going 7 to 9 points. It depends what happens with the United game and what version of Man United shows up. But Man United are scary.
I'm saying 7 points, but I'd still be annoyed if we lost against Leicester and somehow beat Liverpool. That'll still annoy me.
But that's typical Palace.
No, that's typical Palace. It would annoy me. It would annoy me because I wouldn't be like, oh, it's fine. We lost the Leicester game and we beat Liverpool. No, but like, imagine if we need to be serious. And I think we'll all be under Glasner. So, but yeah, at least 7 points. So let's see what actually happens with that. What do you lot think in the chat as well? How many points do you reckon we can get in the next 5 games? Of course, exclude the QPR game because that's a cup game, which I've already answered. Because he's saying, does anyone know if Eze contract has a renewal of the release clause near next summer's transfer slot? I read something implying on this. Yes.
Yeah, apparently it runs for like a month or something. 68.5 5 million or something like that.
We reported yesterday that release clause gets reactivated next summer. So we will be here once again talking about Ez's release clause. Alex Telles news, he's gone to Botafogo, so there's no news there. That's Alex Telles news. There's no Palace player.
I wouldn't have had him anyway, to be fair. He wasn't that great.
We're just talking about him. How much say will Palace have about who Texas sells his shares to? Well, I guess the investor will talk to our current owners. It'll be a bit naive to buy out Texas shares without speaking, especially with our model of the golden share, etc. Who runs the football club? So Palace's current owners will also probably have a bit of say in terms of encouraging the new owners, or if they don't want them, then they could, have this conversation about, we're not on the same wavelength. We have to have conversations because that's the position that we were in with Texter. I think they had a conversation. There's no way Texter bought shares without talking to Parish, but it needs to be clear, like the plans and the power and how the club runs. So I think they will indirectly, maybe. I mean, they won't have a say in terms of Texas.
I mean, in terms of like the problem is he's obviously desperate to get rid as soon as possible. The only problem is they obviously need to foot up over to, I believe it's 220 million. Who's paying 220 million for a share in a club? You don't really get the predominant say.
Yeah, so
it's a bit weird. So unfortunately, he's essentially dug his own grave in that situation. I don't see how he's gonna lose out somewhere along the line, because he was originally offered, I believe it was 150. So basically the same amount he paid in, and he declined because he thinks he's entitled to, I think it's like another million on top of that. But we'll see what happens, man. You've got to remember, this is something we have no control over. So you just got to let it play out, and fingers crossed, you just come to the right person.
Yeah. Let's just see what happens. But look, people, we're going to wrap it up here. If you have enjoyed this, please hit the like, subscribe. And if you just joined us now, go to the start of the show where we talk about Guehi as well as Eze. And also, we just got into a discussion about the future of the football club, because we can do that now. We can do that now that the window is closed. Got a bit more time to chill. We'll be back potentially tomorrow, depending on news. But if you haven't already done so, catch up on previous Palace News episodes yesterday and the days before one. They're still relevant. They're still interesting topics that we discussed. That's it from me and AJ. Thank you to all of you. And until next time, up the Palace.
Up the Palace.